Hello, how are you today? I hope you are doing well, wherever you are, and whatever you are facing right now. There was a time when a man named Daniel woke up every morning with a heavy feeling in his chest. Nothing was really wrong, but nothing felt right either. He had a job, a small room, and enough food. Still, his mind was always busy with negative thoughts. He believed life was unfair to him. When something went wrong, he immediately said to himself, "This always happens to me." When something good happened, he thought, "It won't last." Daniel did not notice it, but his thoughts were slowly shaping his life. Every day on his way to work, he passed the same street, the same people, the same noise. He complained about everything. The weather was bad. The traffic was terrible. People were rude. His job was boring. Over time, his world became smaller, darker, and heavier. He stopped dreaming. He stopped trying. One evening, after a long and tiring day, Daniel sat alone in a quiet cafe. He was not there to enjoy anything. He was there to escape his thoughts for a few minutes. On the table next to him, someone had left a small book. Daniel did not plan to read it, but boredom pushed him to open the first page. The first sentence was simple. Almost too simple. Your thoughts are not just ideas. They are directions. Daniel smiled slightly. He thought it was just another motivational line with no real meaning. But something about that sentence stayed with him. On his way home, it repeated in his mind again and again. Directions, he whispered. That night, Daniel paid attention to his thoughts for the first time. He noticed how quickly his mind jumped to the negative. A small mistake became a disaster. A quiet moment became loneliness. A challenge became fear. He realized he was not reacting to life. He was reacting to his own thinking. The next morning, something small changed. When Daniel woke up, the same problems were waiting for him. Nothing magical happened. But instead of saying "another terrible day," he said, "Let's see what today brings." It felt strange, unnatural, almost fake. But he said it anyway. At work, when a task felt difficult, he did not say, "I can't do this," he said, "I will learn how." The task did not become easy, but his mind became calmer. He made fewer mistakes. He felt less tired. Days passed. Daniel was not suddenly happy all the time. He still had bad moments. But now, he caught himself before falling too deep. He began to understand that positive thinking was not about lying to yourself. It was about choosing a helpful thought instead of a harmful one. Slowly, people around him noticed the change. He listened more. He complained less. Opportunities that he once ignored now caught his attention. A new skill, a new conversation, a new idea. Daniel learned a powerful lesson without even realizing it at first. Life does not change because you wish it to. Life changes when your thinking changes. And this was only the beginning. Daniel did not change overnight. That is something movies lie about. Real change is quiet. It happens in small moments, when no one is watching. One morning, a problem appeared at work. A mistake in a report that could cost the team time and money. In the past, Daniel would panic. He would blame himself, then blame others, then freeze. This time, he felt the old fear rising, but he stopped for a second. He remembered one simple idea. Thoughts are directions. Instead of thinking, "I'm going to fail," he thought, "What is the next small step?" That question changed everything. He fixed what he could. He asked for help without feeling weak. The problem did not disappear, but it became manageable. At the end of the day, Daniel walked home feeling something new. Not pride, not excitement, control. For the first time in years, he felt that his mind was working with him, not against him. As days passed, Daniel started to notice patterns. When he thought negatively, his body felt heavy. His shoulders dropped. His breath became shallow. But when he chose a better thought, even a simple one, his body responded. He stood straighter. He breathed deeper. His energy changed. Positive thinking was not magic. It was alignment. One evening, Daniel met an old friend he had not seen in years. The friend talked about big plans, failures, and lessons learned. Normally, Daniel would compare himself and feel small. That night, he listened differently. Instead of thinking, "I'm behind," he thought, I'm still moving. That thought saved him from shame. Later that night, Daniel wrote something down for the first time in his life. Not goals, not dreams, thoughts. He wrote the negative ones he noticed during the day, then rewrote them in a better way. Not perfect, just better. I'm not good enough became I'm learning. I always fail became improving. This is too hard became this will make me stronger. Some sentences felt uncomfortable, almost like wearing new shoes. But he kept going. Weeks passed. Daniel's life still had stress, but it no longer controlled him. He stopped waiting for motivation to act. He acted, and motivation followed. He learned that confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you build through repeated positive choices. One night, while walking under the city lights, Daniel realized something important. Positive thinking was not about pretending everything was fine. It was about believing that he could handle whatever came next. That belief changed how he spoke, how he worked, and how he saw himself. And without noticing it, Daniel was no longer the same person who once woke up with a heavy heart. He was becoming someone stronger, calmer, and clearer. The journey was far from over, but now he was walking forward with intention. Daniel did not wake up as a new person overnight. Nothing magical happened. He still had doubts, still felt tired some mornings, still questioned himself. But something important had changed. He no longer believed every negative thought that entered his mind. He began to observe his thoughts like clouds. Some were dark, some were heavy, but he understood they were past, not permanent. This idea alone gave him space to breathe. One afternoon, Daniel made a mistake at work. A real one. A deadline was missed, and his manager was not happy. The old Daniel would have gone home angry, blaming himself for hours. This time, he took responsibility, apologized, and asked one simple question: what can I learn from this? That question changed everything. Instead of feeling weak, he felt in control. Mistakes were no longer enemies. They were teachers. Hard teachers, yes, but honest ones. Daniel also noticed how often he compared himself to others. Social media, colleagues, even strangers. Everyone seemed ahead. Everyone seemed confident. One evening, he closed his phone and sat in silence. He realized comparison was stealing his peace. From that day, he decided to compare himself only with who he was yesterday. Small improvements became victories. Speaking one sentence of English without fear, staying calm in a difficult conversation, choosing patience instead of anger. These moments mattered. At night, Daniel wrote one positive thing about his day. Some days it was small. I didn't give up. Some days it was simple. I tried. Over time, his notebook became proof that progress was real, even when it felt slow. Positive thinking, he learned, was not about pretending everything was perfect. It was about choosing hope over helplessness. One weekend, Daniel helped a friend who was struggling. He listened without interrupting, without judging. Afterward, his friend said, "You seem different, stronger." Daniel smiled quietly. Strength, he now knew, was calmness under pressure. As days passed, Daniel's confidence grew, not loudly, but steadily. He trusted his ability to learn, to adapt, to move forward. Fear still visited, but it no longer stayed. He understood that life would always have problems. The real power was deciding how to face them. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt ready for whatever came next. Daniel began to notice something quietly powerful. His environment had not changed, but his reactions had. The same streets, the same office, the same people, yet the weight he used to carry felt lighter. One morning, while waiting for the bus, he overheard two people complaining about work, about money, about life being unfair. Daniel almost joined them. The words were ready. Then he stopped. He realized how often he used to live inside complaints, not because they solved anything, but because they felt familiar. He stayed silent and watched his breath instead. At work, a new challenge arrived, a project that felt too big, too complex. Fear whispered again, "You are not ready, you will fail." This time, Daniel answered calmly, "Maybe I am not ready yet, but I can learn." He broke the task into small steps. One email, one page, one question. The project did not shrink, but his fear did. In the evenings, Daniel practiced speaking English aloud, slowly, clearly. Some words felt heavy on his tongue. Some sentences sounded wrong. He kept going, not to be perfect, but to be better. Each mistake became familiar, and familiarity reduced fear. He remembered something important. Confidence is built in private, not in front of people. One night, Daniel failed again. He froze during a conversation. His mind went blank. The silence hurt. He went home disappointed. But instead of attacking himself, he sat down and wrote what happened. Not with anger, but with honesty. What went wrong? Why did it happen? What can I do next time? That night, he slept peacefully. Days turned into weeks. Daniel's thinking became more flexible. When plans changed, he adapted. When people disagreed, he listened. When progress slowed, he stayed patient. Positive thinking was no longer an idea. It was a habit. He learned that optimism is not blind belief. It is trained focus. It is choosing where to place attention when everything demands panic. One afternoon, his manager trusted him with responsibility, not because Daniel was perfect, but because he was reliable, calm, willing to improve. Daniel understood something deeply. Life does not reward loud confidence. It rewards steady effort. As he walked home that evening, the city felt different. Not brighter, just clearer. He was not chasing a perfect future anymore. He was building a stronger present, and step by step, that was enough. Daniel's life did not suddenly become easy. In fact, some days felt heavier than before. Growth has a strange way of doing that. When you become more aware, you notice more. Your mistakes, your limits, your fears. But this awareness was no longer painful. It was useful. One morning, Daniel woke up feeling tired and unmotivated. The old feeling tried to return. The voice said, "You are going backwards." He stayed in bed for a moment and listened carefully. Then he answered that voice with calm logic. One slow day does not cancel weeks of effort. He got up anyway. Daniel learned that discipline is not about feeling strong. It is about acting even when you feel weak. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays if you train it. At work, he faced criticism again. This time was direct, clear, honest. His chest tightened. His mind wanted to defend itself, to explain, to escape blame. Instead, he listened fully. He took notes. He thanked the person for the feedback. Later alone, he reflected on it. Some of the criticism was fair, some was not. He accepted what helped and released the rest. This balance felt mature, powerful. In the past, criticism felt like an attack on his identity. Now, it felt like information. Daniel also changed how he spoke to himself. When he failed, he no longer said, "I am stupid," he said, "I need more practice." When things were slow, he stopped saying, "I am lazy," he said, "I am learning." Consistency. Language shaped his emotions more than he realized. In the evenings, Daniel walked without his phone. No music, no distractions. Just his thoughts and the sound of his steps. At first, silence was uncomfortable. Then it became peaceful. Ideas appeared. Clarity grew. He realized how noisy his life used to be. Not outside, inside. During one of these walks, Daniel thought about his future. Not in big dreams, but in simple direction. Who do I want to become? Not rich, not famous, just calm, skilled, reliable. That answer surprised him. Daniel understood something important. Most people chase results. Very few people build character, but character stays when results disappear. He started helping others more, not to feel superior, but to stay grounded. Teaching someone a word in English, listening to a problem, encouraging a friend. These small actions reminded him how far he had come. One night, Daniel looked at his old notes. The fear, the doubt, the confusion. He did not feel shame. He felt respect. That version of him survived enough to allow growth. Progress, he learned, is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up quietly in how you react, how you think, how you choose. And Daniel was choosing better, one ordinary day at a time. Over time, Daniel began to notice a deeper change. It was not something others could easily see, but he felt it clearly. His reactions were slower, not weak, just thoughtful. He no longer jumped to conclusions or let emotions control his behavior. This calm did not make life easier, but it made life clearer. There were still difficult days. Some mornings, doubt returned quietly. It whispered questions instead of shouting fears. What if this effort leads nowhere? What if you are just pretending to improve? Daniel learned not to fight these thoughts. He let them exist without giving them power. Thoughts, he realized, are not commands. They are suggestions. One afternoon, Daniel faced a situation that would have once broken his confidence. A project he worked on for weeks did not succeed. The results were disappointing. People expected more. The old Daniel would have blamed himself harshly. He would have replayed the failure again and again in his mind. This time, he did something different. He paused. He looked at the facts, not the emotions. He asked simple questions. What worked? What didn't? What can I learn? He wrote the answers down. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Failure became a lesson instead of a label. Daniel understood that success is not the opposite of failure. It is built from it. His English learning followed the same pattern. Some days, words flowed easily. Other days, his mind felt empty. Instead of quitting, he stayed consistent. He listened more than he spoke. He read simple texts slowly. He repeated phrases without shame. Progress felt boring sometimes, but it was real. He stopped comparing himself to others. Comparison, he learned, steals focus. Everyone walks a different path with a different pace. Daniel chose to respect his own. As weeks passed, people around him noticed something. He spoke with more clarity, not louder, not faster, just clearer. His confidence did not come from perfect sentences, but from comfort with imperfection. One evening, someone asked him, "When did you become so confident?" Daniel smiled softly. He did not know the exact moment. Confidence, he realized, does not arrive suddenly. It grows quietly when you keep promises to yourself. At night, before sleeping, Daniel reflected on his day, not to judge himself, but to understand himself. This habit became his anchor. Awareness replaced regret. Intention replaced chaos. He accepted that growth is not linear. Some days move forward. Some days stay still. A few days move backward. What matters is not the direction of one day, but the direction of your habits. Daniel no longer chased motivation. He built systems, simple routines, clear priorities, gentle discipline. These things held him steady when emotions changed. Life was still uncertain. The future was still unknown. But Daniel felt ready, not because he had all the answers, but because he trusted his ability to learn. And that trust made all the difference. Daniel slowly realized that the most important battle was not outside of him. It was inside his own mind. The voice that doubted him was familiar, but it was no longer powerful. He learned how to listen without obeying. This skill changed everything. He started to notice how often fear tried to protect him by holding him back. Fear said, "Stay where you are. It is safer." But Daniel understood something new. Safety and growth do not live in the same place. If he wanted a better life, he had to accept discomfort. One day, he was offered a small opportunity. Nothing dramatic. Just a chance to speak, to share ideas, to be seen. The old version of himself would have refused politely. He would have said he was not ready. This time, Daniel felt the fear and moved forward anyway. His voice was not perfect. His words were not perfect. But he spoke with honesty. That mattered more than perfection. When it was over, he did not feel proud. He felt relieved. Relief told him something important. The fear was worse than the action. After that moment, Daniel began to lean into challenges instead of avoiding them. He did not rush. He chose carefully, one challenge at a time. Each small success rewired his thinking. Confidence was no longer a mystery. It was a result. He paid more attention to how he spent his time. Time, he learned, is shaped by decisions. Not big decisions, but small ones repeated daily. He reduced distractions. He protected his focus. Even short moments of deep work created long-term results. He paid more attention to how he spent his time. Time, he learned, is shaped by decisions. Not big decisions, but but small ones repeated daily. He reduced distractions. He protected his focus. Even short moments of deep work created long-term results. Learning English became part of his identity, not a task. He spoke to himself in English when walking. He described simple objects in his mind. He stopped translating every word. Understanding replaced control. There were days when progress felt invisible. Daniel reminded himself that roots grow underground before anything appears above the surface. Not all effort shows immediate results. Patience became his quiet strength. He also learned to forgive himself faster. Mistakes no longer meant failure. They meant feedback. This shift saved him energy. Instead of wasting time on regret, he invested time in correction. People began to trust him more, not because he knew everything, but because he listened. He asked better questions. He stayed calm under pressure. Emotional control became his advantage. Daniel understood that discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect. Every time he chose consistency over comfort, he told himself, "I matter." That message changed how he showed up in the world. At the end of each week, Daniel looked back, not to count achievements, but to notice patterns. Awareness kept him aligned. He was no longer drifting through life. For the first time, Daniel felt connected to his future, not through dreams, but through actions. He was becoming the person he once waited for, and this time, he was not waiting anymore. Daniel reached a stage where his progress felt quiet but solid. There were no big celebrations, no sudden applause, but inside, something had settled. He trusted himself more than before, and that trust was built slowly, day by day. He stopped chasing motivation. He noticed that motivation was unreliable. Some days it appeared, some days it disappeared. Discipline, however, stayed. Even on tired mornings, Daniel showed up. Even when his mood was low, he continued. That consistency became his strongest habit. There were moments when old patterns tried to return. Procrastination whispered excuses. Comfort tried to pull him back into familiar routines. Daniel did not fight these feelings aggressively. He observed them calmly. He learned that resisting too hard often makes things worse. Awareness weakened the habit more than force. English was no longer something he studied only when he had time. It was part of how he lived. He listened while walking. He read short texts before sleeping. He spoke slowly, without shame. Mistakes became normal and useful. Each mistake pointed to the next improvement. Daniel also learned the value of silence. Not every thought needed a response. Not every opinion needed to be shared. This helped him stay focused and calm. His mind felt clearer. Decisions became easier. One important lesson changed how he worked with others. He realized that progress does not come from proving yourself. It comes from improving yourself. Comparison lost its power. He measured growth only against who he was yesterday. When challenges appeared, Daniel asked better questions. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What is this trying to teach me?" This shift turned problems into lessons. Pressure became information. He started setting realistic goals. Not goals that looked impressive, but goals that could be repeated. Small goals kept his momentum alive. Success no longer depended on luck. It depended on preparation. Some people noticed his change. They asked him what he was doing differently. Daniel did not give dramatic answers. He simply said he learned to respect his time and energy. That was the truth. There were still hard days. Growth did not remove difficulty. It changed how he responded to it. Instead of panic, he used patience. Instead of quitting, he adjusted. Daniel understood something deeply now. Confidence is not loud. It does not need attention. It is quiet and stable. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. At night, before sleeping, Daniel felt calm. Not because life was perfect, but because he knew he was moving forward. Slowly, clearly, honestly. And that steady movement was changing everything over time. Daniel began to understand a quiet truth. Real growth often feels boring. There are no dramatic moments, no sudden transformations. Most days look simple, ordinary, and yet, those ordinary days were doing the real work. He learned to respect boredom instead of escaping from it. When things felt slow, he stayed. When progress felt invisible, he continued. This was new for him. Before, he always quit when excitement disappeared. Now, he knew that boredom was a sign of stability, not failure. Daniel paid closer attention to how he started his mornings. He noticed that the first hour of the day shaped everything that followed. Instead of rushing, he slowed down. He planned one important task and finished it before distractions appeared. That single habit protected his focus. He also learned to forgive himself faster. When he made mistakes, he did not punish himself for days. He corrected the mistake and moved on. Guilt no longer controlled his energy. Responsibility replaced shame. English slowly became a tool, not a goal. He used it to understand ideas, to connect with people, to explore new thoughts. Learning felt lighter. He no longer asked how fast he was improving. He asked whether he was improving at all. And the answer was yes. Daniel reduced noise in his life. Less scrolling, fewer unnecessary conversations, more space to think. That space helped him hear his own voice again. He trusted his decisions more because they came from clarity, not pressure. There were moments when fear appeared. Fear of wasting time. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of starting something new. Daniel did not wait for fear to leave. He acted while fear was present. That changed everything. He realized that courage is not confidence. Courage is action without confidence. And once action begins, confidence follows quietly. Daniel started choosing long-term benefits over short-term comfort. This choice was uncomfortable at first, but each time he chose growth, his self-respect increased. That self-respect became a powerful source of strength. He also noticed how language shaped his thoughts. He stopped saying "I can't" and replaced it with "I'm learning." This small change softened his inner dialogue. His mind felt like a place of support, not attack. Some days still felt heavy, but they no longer felt meaningless. Daniel knew that even slow days were building something important. Progress was happening beneath the surface. At this point, Daniel was no longer chasing a better life. He was building one, quietly, through daily choices. And for the first time, that felt real. Daniel noticed that life kept presenting challenges, but now, they no longer controlled him. Every problem, big or small, became an opportunity to practice patience, focus, and calm thinking. He understood that he couldn't control everything, but he could control how he responded. This insight gave him a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. He continued building his habits carefully. Mornings became a sacred time, dedicated to reflection, planning, and learning. Even 15 minutes of reading or practicing English before breakfast gave him momentum for the whole day. Small, consistent actions were slowly compounding, creating results that surprised him over time. Social interactions changed too. Daniel no longer reacted emotionally to criticism or rude comments. He listened, processed, and responded with thoughtfulness. Others noticed his calmness, and slowly, people began to seek his perspective. Trusting his clarity and steadiness. His voice had weight, not because it was loud, but because it came from someone who had trained his mind. He also learned that failures were not endings. One project at work failed. A plan did not go as expected. A conversation went badly. In the past, these moments would have crushed him. Now, he analyzed what went wrong, extracted the lesson, and moved forward. Each failure became a building block, not a barrier. Daniel's understanding of time deepened. He realized that waiting for the perfect moment was a trap. Perfection never arrives, and waiting consumes life. Action, even small and imperfect, was the only way forward. He started taking small steps toward long-term goals every day. Slowly, things started to shift. He also noticed the subtle impact of his own thoughts on his body. Stress and worry created tension in his shoulders and back. Calm, intentional thinking relaxed him. Meditation, even for a few minutes daily, became a powerful tool. Awareness of body and mind became interconnected, reinforcing his progress. Over months, Daniel became a living example of quiet growth. He was not famous, rich, or extraordinary in the world's eyes, but he was extraordinary in his own. His confidence no longer depended on approval. His happiness did not depend on circumstances. He had learned the power of consistent, intentional habits, and the quiet discipline of self-awareness. Daniel also began helping others. He shared his insights with friends and colleagues. He realized that teaching reinforced learning. The advice he gave was simple: notice your thoughts, take small, consistent actions, and trust the process. This advice was not new, but Daniel's calm embodiment of it made it powerful. At night, he would reflect quietly, not judging himself, not worrying about the future, but noticing growth. Awareness had become his compass. Mistakes no longer paralyzed him. Small victories, repeated daily, built resilience, confidence, and skill. Eventually, Daniel looked back on the months of change and realized he had become someone he once thought only others could be. He was not perfect. He was still learning, but he was aware, disciplined, resilient, and growing every day. That awareness had become freedom. And now, Daniel understood something he had never known before. Life does not require perfection. Life requires presence, awareness, and consistent effort. That was the key to lasting change. So wherever you are, remember this: small, daily choices create the person you become. Awareness turns mistakes into lessons. Action turns fear into confidence. Discipline turns ordinary days into extraordinary growth. And with that, let us leave Daniel here not at an ending, because his journey continues, like yours. The story is never about a final destination. It is about the steps, the awareness, and the courage to move forward. Thank you for following Daniel's journey. Carry his lessons with you and take the next step today. Change begins with a single action. Keep going,